Okay. On
There we
on the
go.
cost management side, that we're moving into it, it's important that you have a clear, defined scope and work breakdown structure that's flowing out of your feed phase. In there, you look at resource planning, cost estimating, cost budgeting, and cost control. But the essence is you want to have a final estimate that you can trust and that you're happy with the confidence in there. So you look at detailed definition and realistic timelines, milestones, and handover planning, your your access single contracts versus various contractors, your accurate baseline estimate, and that you can really use in your implementation to compare everything towards and control your cost with correct confidence levels and contingency allocations. And the cost estimates should include all the cost. We very often just want to include your direct cost, your equipment and construction, and then you find what I call softer cost is that you actually underestimate that and running into problems. Your legal costs that you need, your taxes, your financing, all of those things, because all of them will actually be cost in your face that you need to fund somewhere. Let's go to the next slide that we're just building up the estimate a little bit and see how we're doing the cost management. So in your baseline side on the left, you're going to estimate your cost on your normal way of you doing it. It's measurements or budgets or cost tenders from various companies. And then you have to go through and look at your confidence level. Do you really trust that number, and what's your confidence in that number? And depending on that, you will develop a contingency. And in this case, your estimated cost was 206, but your confidence overall level, you've come out with 88%, and that sort of you say is that you need another 23.7 on top of that for a confidence level, bringing your estimate up in round numbers to around 260. Then in the implementation phase, I call it a static formula that you say is how do you actually control the cost? You start committing and spending money. In this case, you've spent 156, and you can just mechanistically say, but you still need to spend 104 and you'll be on budget in 260. I haven't bring in the complexities of your contingency in the argument for illustrated purposes. But in true life, that doesn't happen that way. You have to go and look at your outstanding spend and look at how do you estimate how much you're still going to spend, because things will change, rates goes up, there could be scope changes and things like that. And in this example, if you look at that and do it quite well, and you spend estimate another 114, then your actual end estimate will be 270, means you're actually over budget. And your behavior of how you manage your project in this scenario will be very different. So it's important that very regularly, it's actually more ongoing process, but you bring it together maybe on a monthly basis. You look at that variance and look at your final estimated cost, that you can proactively implement plans to correct these deviations. On the next slide, we're just showing a little bit of things that will influence how you're going to look at your variances. So So your bottom line of 890 in this case is your baseline cost, but your estimated to end of the job cost in this case is somewhere between 920 and 925. And the reason for that is there could be steel price increases, product storage requirements in this case have changed, your construction man-hour costs have changed. But luckily, because you knew that, you looked at how do you optimize your product storage and bring it down, in that case, by -5. So that you always have from month to month a forward look of what is your estimated or your final estimated cost. Thank you. James, over to you for that.
Unmuting myself. Thank you. So we found very similar needs within our IPD contracting model because all of our trades are on a cost reimbursed basis, and everyone else on the team is actually affected if a contractor goes over budget. So from this concrete example, In our previous models where the trades have a lump sum or a guaranteed maximum price, if the concrete contractor has poor productivity and goes over budget, that's only the concrete contractor's problem. But within a shared cost model, if the concrete contractor goes significantly over budget, then everybody on the team will actually potentially lose profit. And what we found is that many teams are not good at forecasting costs. They don't have a way of looking at what it should have cost to put some amount of work in place versus what it actually did cost, and then carrying that through to the end of the job. Most companies, we found, unfortunately, even large ones, will take what they've spent and then they'll add the rest of their contract value and say that's what it's going to cost. So they're always projecting the exact contract value. And then right near the end of the job, they come back and say, actually, I'm several $1 million over budget, and then it's too late. So this is an example of one, forecasting, so looking at productivity. This is another more simple example just to illustrate the point of drywall on a project. So you create a work breakdown structure. You come up with the estimated hours for each of these tasks, and then the committed hours column is how many hours have we spent to date on that task. And then you need to have the experience of the project manager or some good productivity metrics to say how many more hours is it going to take us to complete the work. And so you can see on the first line, we actually saved 109 hours. On the next line, we saved 1,000 hours. But then as you go down, some of the other ones we're projecting it's going to take an extra 347 hours to do wall backing. So then we use a blended labor rate of what that cost is, and we can determine much more accurately where their final cost is going to be as opposed to just what their contract value is. So another learning for us is that you also need to do that with the design team, because the construction team now is affected if the architect goes over budget in construction administration. So we've come up with a resource loaded work plan for design where they have a projected monthly spend for packages, and then they have to update with actuals. And then we're looking at, are they trending over or under? And then talking about, will that trend continue? The last piece is talking about risk and opportunities. And as was mentioned before, this is happening on a weekly basis. This is not something that happens once a month or every 6 months. So the entire project team, you can see in the lower right, sits down and they go through an Excel spreadsheet. It's not super sophisticated, of every little RFI, every little issue that's come up, and say, okay, what's the potential cost of that? And how can we mitigate that issue? And do we have any opportunities? So can we change a detail or buy something out more effectively? So by taking the productivity of all of the partners on the team, design and construction, as well as all of the risks to the job, which are mostly identified issues in the field, we can aggregate those into an overall projection of where we think the job is going to finish. So this is one project that has about $112 million contract value. And so in the middle, the blue line says if the cost is below that blue line, the team is going to get 80% of any savings. And if it goes below the green line, then they will have doubled their profit. And the assumption is there may have been a major estimating area to finish that far under budget. So the team will double their profit and 100% of the remainder will go back to the owner. If the cost goes above the red line, then the team actually starts losing their profit, and that circle that we showed earlier starts to get smaller. So we aggregate the cost, and on a monthly basis, all of the project managers for the companies, they meet, we aggregate the productivity and the risk and reward, and we come up with this purple line, which is our projected cost to complete the job at that point in time. And so you can see that it does vary. The goal is that you don't have huge jumps from month to month. And the more often you update this, the less likely you are to have massive swings from one update to the next.